Hello and welcome to the Go There Do That podcast. My name is Ethan. Right now I am by myself. Heather is currently doing a project in the house that she started earlier today, so I am just recording this podcast to make sure that I get something out today because I try to do it weekly. Doing a podcast is actually kind of difficult. It was difficult enough to set this whole thing up, but it's now even more difficult. We're on episode 4. They say the average podcast doesn't last more than 5 episodes. So, in order to try to make it past the average, recording one by myself. I don't know if that's the best choice, but we'll see. I wanted to talk to everyone, I guess, whoever is listening, about this past week I've had. I went to a bachelor party in New Mexico. I was there last week. I was getting back a week ago, and then 2 days later, I went to see family. Of a bit of a family emergency going on in my life right now. My mother has cancer, so I was out of town for that. And then on Friday, it was mine and Heather's 5-year anniversary. We had a wedding rehearsal dinner to go to that day. And then a wedding the next day. So this is separate from the bachelor party that I went to. It's another wedding and another couple, of course. So we've been pretty busy. I tried to find a day this week when we could record, and after all that, today is Sunday, the only time to record. Anyways, excuses. What are you even listening for? Is it because you know these people that have traveled and been places and you're hoping for some interesting insight? Did you meet Ethan? Me talking? Did you meet me somewhere along the road and I told you I have a podcast and now you're listening and you're like, what is he going to say? We were starting our Alaska series. It'll be at least 3 parts. So I guess this is just sort of an update on what we are going to do. Yeah. And it's just me giving you excuses on how busy we've been as well. So if you want to live a normal life, don't start a podcast. But what is normal? So anyways, thanks everyone who is listening. I'll go through the list of people who I've come across that have said that they've listened. Number 1, Dana, Megan, Zach, Taylor, Thomas, Kagan, Carlos, and Nick. If you're listening, buddy, thinking about you. And also Chase. So thanks, guys. It's been a fun process. So Go There Do That in its own singular platform, I think is difficult to really grasp exactly what I'm doing here with Go There Do That. When you look at it overall, and you don't need homework, but the videos I make are like the feelings I have as we go on these trips that we've been on. And that's really how I sort of reflect on these experiences and making videos about the experience. we took a trip at the end of 2021, a van road trip. And I've already kind of talked about this, but not really the video aspect too much, but it was 93 minutes long total, all of these videos. I believe it was 10 of them. This is called the National Park Extravaganza. It was named by Heather because she wrote is what was said on her giant notebook that she made for this trip. Organizing and planning, that's what that was for. But yeah, so that entire experience was sort of reflected. The way I was feeling at the time of editing was put into in combination with the way I was feeling at the time of going through and experiencing that place. So there's a lot of similarities, if that makes sense. Please ask me a question if this doesn't make sense. I'm trying to explain myself pretty well. But that's often hard to do. So yeah, anyways, this 93 minutes of video kind of goes through the entire thought process of how to express myself through making these videos. Is it just music over a montage of clips driving from one place to the other? I mean, Guadalupe Mountains National Park, that video is pretty cool. We climb up a mountain while it's snowing. You know, sometimes no words need to be said. I mean, I do turn the camera around and like say, hey, what's up, guys? This is an update. This is crazy, isn't it? But at the time of like recording, I can't stop and like set everything up and be like, okay, guys, what's up? Today, we're here at Guadalupe Mountains National Park in XYZ. It's really what the podcast is for. So that's what I mean by like, it's hard to know what it's all about if you just watch sort of one piece. It's like a extended universe. Go there, do that. Each platform has its own way of like telling more about what I'm doing. Not to say that you need to do homework. It's just the way it is right now as a sort of a one-man technological army going through all this. And of course, there is Heather, who has given me amazing support along the way. But as far as like application of the technical knowledge, that's sort of all up to me. And of course, Heather plans everything, so that is also a huge deal, super big deal. Because I don't think I have the brain power to like keep in mind like where to stay, what to eat, what to pack, how to be alive, and also keep track of camera equipment and stuff, because that's my main focus is like, oh, what about this camera? What about this camera? My luggage is full of all the cameras first, and then I pack clothes most of the time. And Heather packs essentials needed for living not miserably, and just is overall probably more responsible than I am. But the point is, I see Go There Do That as more of like a journey that we are taking, and not sort of a thing with a conclusion already. Like, it's fun to see kind of where it goes, like what new idea sort of pops into your head, and then you're like, can I do that? And if you really believe you can do anything you want, if you set your mind to it, yada yada, like, that's what I struggle the most with, is doing the things that I say I'm going to do. The things that I tell myself I'm going to do is the hardest thing to do. It's like, that's what being true to yourself is, I guess. If you promise yourself something, you know that if you don't do it, you're going to be disappointed every day you're not doing it. And that's hard to live with for some people. Maybe not everybody, but I try to write in my journal a lot. about this stuff, and I think it's sort of, for certain feelings, there's a time and a place for those, if that makes sense. So thinking about, oh, this is a cool idea, I should write it down. But then you write it down, and I don't have a habit of rereading what I write down in my journal. What I do like doing the most is rewatching videos that I make. But that's done in a different way. Like it's different feelings. Like a feeling that's that strong for me to sit up all night editing and have work the next day. Like that's a feeling that will not go away unless I do it. And if I don't do it, it turns into something else. Like that passion that I have seems like it turns sour if I'm not creating something with it. And then it's still there inside of you. It just turned kind of maybe rotten with regret, if that makes sense. Like, I should have done this thing. I should have done it while I had the chance. But like, what stops you from doing those things? Like, at least for me, what goes on in my brain is there's a constant flow of ideas cycling in my brain. It's like water. I say like a water wheel, like one of those mills, water mill. Is that what it's called? I don't know. But it's like rotating. Each little bucket has a thought inside of it, or an idea, and the ideas, the more you think about them, the more like complicated they get. So like it could start with, I'm hungry, I should get something to eat. And that's a very basic like idea, but then it's more of a loaded, not a loaded question, but a loaded thought coming in. So there's more weight to these thoughts that you have. So you have to take them more seriously if you are to entertain them enough to actually say what you're thinking. So it's like a rotation of thoughts, because I don't know where exactly thoughts come from. I know we all know what's in your head, right? But like, what makes an idea? What's the aha moment, right? I'm sure it can be explained, but I don't have the capacity to explain where thoughts come from. But I know what they are. And so when you have a good one, a loaded one, like full of a lot of potential, it's a little seed or whatever, and you can choose to put it out into the world, and part of it is, okay, I told myself that I was going to do this thing, and that's where it can kind of stay. When you bring it out into the external world, your brain gets the same like chemical reaction as actually doing the thing. Sometimes like saying it is good enough. Like, I should really do this for myself, or I should really start doing this today. And you don't always do those things because you need to think about how loaded these thoughts are, right? Like I said, I'm going to start a podcast. That's a big deal. Like, I know that I have enough knowledge to start one. So at that point, it's really up to me whether or not I actually do it. Right? It's not like I don't have the technical knowledge. I've been in the video field for probably 9 years now. And now I haven't done something exactly like this, but I know I can, obviously. And so me doing this is sort of proving to myself every single time I record this that I am capable of doing the things I put my mind to. But what's the point if you're just going to do it one time, say you did it, and then be done? Because I don't know how much value this one singular podcast is bringing you right now. But over the course of time, it might add up to something. Because this is just one little corner of the canvas of this. I see it as a giant, culmination. In a few years, I'm hoping that I'll look back on this podcast and know that it was worth it. That's what I really hope. But I know it might not. you know? I have to accept that idea too. What matters the most is right now I'm saying something and doing something for that end product. And this is just like journaling. It doesn't always make sense while you're doing it, but maybe if you reflect back on this, you'll know whether or not it was a good idea, and you learn from it. I might think that this entire episode is a bad idea, but Heather's not here to wrangle me in, and I want to talk to talk to her about Alaska. So I'm kind of improvising right now. So how am I doing? I don't know. So I might go just one more layer deeper and start talking about I'm doing it. There's a quote I read in Alan Watts' book. I was reading it in New Mexico. And the quote is, "The fool who persists in his own folly becomes wise." And that really gets me thinking about what exactly that means. So it could mean that if you are truly honest with yourself and you know who you are and your vices, your goods and your bads, if you know this, right, you persist in your own flaws because that's who you are and you can't change who you are, really. Like you can't take your conscious brain out and then put it into someone else's and then live a different life, This isn't Freaky Friday. Oh, Cece. Hopefully she didn't mess with the cables, but maybe. Anyways, you can't change who you are. So what is persisting in your own folly? A folly is like a flaw, like your fault, your downfall. You persist in that and then you become wise. Like maybe we're all fools who don't know what's going on. And once you know you can't change who you are, you persist in those flaws that were like inherited just by existing. And that's when you quit being self-conscious and are okay with who you are and what you're doing and exactly where you are in your life. Or it could mean, a fool hitting rock bottom, persisting in his downfall, his flaws, his faults and stuff. You hit rock bottom. Oh, I don't need to do this anymore. Become wise, the turning point, if you will. Or being honest with yourself, which means sort of back to the first definition of like knowing who you are, but you persist in your own folly. You don't make it anyone else's problem, right? By problem, I mean externalizing it into the world, just like the thoughts in the wheel. Like as soon as you put it out there into the world, it has a whole new meaning because like thoughts kind of don't exist. Like they're impossible to prove unless you say them. So if you have that thought that you really want to put out there, what happens if you keep it to yourself? Like, will there be no difference? So persisting in your own folly means that like you internalize a lot of things, kind of digest a lot of things just in your own head, like reflecting, right? You keep asking, why am I this way? If you ask yourself that, that's where you get more honest answers. Because you can't ask why am I having these thoughts? You can't ask anybody that. Like, how would they know? A therapist, I've never been to a therapist, but therapists kind of the job is to lead you into that place in your head for you, like help you. It's just like a tool to crack this oyster open, shuck it, and that's your brain. Well, your thoughts, right? You want to discover more about yourself, you really have to be alone and be mindful of why you're doing what you're doing. That's hard for a lot of people to do. It's something that I had thought about, like starting off every new podcast with from now on. It's like an exercise in sort of a mindfulness thing. I don't know. Maybe it'll work. It's kind of fun to try, and then you kind of maybe won't see the results. But if you go in with no expectations, there's no harm in it. So one of these exercises is like you close your hand into a fist in front of you, and you can close your eyes or not, but you think the thought of opening your hand. So you're telling your hand to be open, but your hand doesn't actually open until you make it open, right? It's not the thoughts, it's the actions that actually do the changing, is the idea behind that. Believe it or not, I heard that from TikTok, because that's where everything is today. But yeah, like separating your thoughts and your actions is an exercise. So it starts with, closing your hand into a fist, thinking the words open, sesame, whatever you say to your hand to get it to open. It's whatever you say won't matter though, because it won't open until you choose to take that action. So something I discovered back in October when we went on the Blue Ridge Parkway trip. We were out in Tennessee, and in that area of America. And it was nighttime. I was taking out the trash, and so that to keep bears away, the trash is a little further away from the campsite. So it was like a quarter of a mile through some trees. Like it was long enough to not be around anyone. Long enough walk. And so I'm at the edge of these woods at night, these tall skinny trees, right? And I do like scary movies. But the problem with those, there's some people who swear off scary movies. And somebody had told me once that the reason they don't watch scary movies is because those thoughts won't ever exist if they don't put them into their head, right? Like, why subject yourself to something terrifying, like a ghost or a demon or whatever new scary thing that somebody can come up with in a movie. Like, because then that's in your head, and then you like share that thought, and like, oh, if I say this in the mirror 3 times, or if I, what's another scary movie thing? Oh, if I watch this VHS tape, The Ring, or I guess you can't really do anything about the Saw movies. Unless you're a bad person. Oh, well, that would scare you into being a good person. Saw. Anyways, I like scary movies because of the feeling they evoke, right? Anything that can, like, trigger an emotional response from me, that to me is, like, good storytelling. It's also up to me to, like, relate to whatever's going on. Because you can listen to a song once and then be like, oh, that was okay. When you listen to it again later, you can have a whole new meaning because of the experiences you had between the first and the second listen. Yeah. So, anyways, I am assigning meaning to this moment where I was standing at the edge of these woods in Tennessee. And I kept looking and I couldn't look away. I was imagining like bears or witches or whatever thing I watched in a movie once, like the scary things coming out, right? That's just fear and anxiety or whatever, because it's not actually happening. But in that moment, I recognized the difference between the two. So it's like the fist closing and you're thinking, open it, but it doesn't actually open. So it's the same thing with like environment around you, right? Like you're afraid something's going to happen. Like I was afraid some bear would come out and charge me, which it very well could have, right? But if you think rationally, like what are the odds of a bear being in this campground? There is like, it's not super late. There's still some people up. Why would a bear be around here? Oh, it's the trash can. Okay. So then I combine those two thoughts and be like, I am near this trash can, which is far away because of bears. So what do? I just stared out into the woods, and I wasn't waiting for a bear because there was no bear. Like that entire time, a bear didn't come out. I would react differently if a bear had come out, or a witch, or a demon, or whatever else I was thinking of. But it was separate from that moment, which you can kind of apply that to every day in your life, where this fear of something happening isn't real until it actually happens. Duh, right? It's like a no crap idiot, Ethan. But I mean, really, how often do you think about it in a moment, though? Like, it's easy to think about it now while I'm explaining all of this. But in reality, how often do you find yourself being mindful of what's happening around you? I don't know. Something else I like to do is when you're in like a busy, high stimulus environment, like say at a brewery, a bar, church gathering, just lots of people, whatever. If you find yourself there, take 10 seconds to look around you. I guess maybe that's called grounding. 10 seconds to look around you and observe the people talking, what's around you, like if there's anything hanging on the walls, the little details about that moment. And then you can do that more and more, like it's just like a practice, exercise. The more you do it, the better you get at it, as with anything. This requires effort, I guess, but it's like all about like your mental effort. Because I think in today's day and age, right, lots of people are losing the ability to focus and be present. I don't know if anyone out there has noticed, but I certainly have. And, that just societies change all the time, but it is a little bit concerning when talking to people younger than me now, because I've realized I'm 28 now, and I'm not the young person anymore. Like there's people who were born in the year 2000 and they're 23 years old, which is kind of crazy to think about for me. But yeah, as these younger people get older and I get older with them, I've been asking like these questions about kids who just graduated college or are about to graduate college. Ask them, like, what is it like living right now? Because I have a totally different experience being in my safe, comfortable job and comfortable house where I can shoot a podcast in. Like, I understand that I'm very, like, disconnected with a lot of people in society. So I would like to know other people's opinions and points of view. Like, there's only one thing I can do with that is learn, what it's like. And then from there, I don't know what I would do. Like, I would want to share. This is what I've been doing, I guess, is sharing these experiences that people tell me with other people like I am now, and saying, hey, this person who graduated college, who has no idea what to do with their life, they're kind of just not able to focus on anything, not even themselves. Like I was told I can't mention names, not right now, but I was told that they couldn't watch a TV show that was 30 minutes long because they couldn't focus for that long. They could only do like the short videos that you have on TikTok and stuff. And this person was like, functioning member of our society. Like, it's shaped to where you can sort of live that way. But if you're not focused on anything, like 30 minutes is a long time to focus on something, right? You're watching a TV show. That is, I guess, a long time now by the standards of today, but like really focusing on what's around you is where it starts, because you're not going to be able to complete a task if you can't focus on anything for more than, I don't know, there's a lot of things that can be done in 30 minutes. But I'm talking about the things that you really want to do for yourself, like working out or reading or whatever. Yes, 30 minutes is a long time. But what if you just sort of applied that to each and every moment where you're always learning? It's not just this one goal that you have that you're attached to, whatever it is. You want to be a musician, a famous podcaster, an actor, whatever. Those things take time. And that's my point with this episode, is that I cannot allow a missed week just because things get a little out of focus. Because there's always going to be things that show up. Always things to be distracted with. It's always going to be somebody's wedding or a family emergency. It's like, when do you find the time? Like, right now is the time for me to be doing this. But it's difficult to know exactly how to do it. Except for just doing it. Like Nike says. Just do it. Something sort of helps me, or a metaphor that I like to use that I thought of, is when you're born, you're kind of like, imagine yourself as like a mirror, and as you have more and more things, responsibilities, right? When you're born, you have no responsibilities, right? There's somebody else literally keeping you alive 24/7. And then as you grow more aware of you being able to take action, like motor skills, right? And then it goes into like thought processes, and then good versus bad, and then how to get a job, how to maintain a relationship, how to maintain a relationship with friends, family. Not only a relationship, but like there's different people you have to have a relationship with in different ways, right? Like, how do you talk to this girl? How do you talk to this guy? How do you really be honest with people about yourself? Like, all these things come into mind, right? And then it expands globally, right? Like, oh, what's happening over there? Is this going to affect me much or at all? I'm scared of it, and I don't want it to happen anymore. So what I'm going to do is worry about joining this group or donating to this cause. Nothing wrong with any of these things, right? But my point is, there's more things to worry about. So back to the mirror, as you do more of these things and worry about more of these things, it's like your mirror becomes more and more cracked, like, a cracked mirror, and then you see like multiple versions of yourself. And so that gets into living each and every moment, like when you are with friends or with family or trying to maintain, back to the relationships thing, like you're trying to juggle all these things. So like when you are solely focused, or when you are with this person, you be solely focused on that moment of maintaining this relationship, because that's why you are talking to them, meeting with them, hanging out with them, right? You're not worried about what you're doing afterwards. And yes, you need to keep track of the time if you're a busy person. But that's the mirror. Like, you focus on this one aspect. It's a tiny part of yourself, but you're focused all on it, and that becomes everything, right? Complete attention into everything you do. So that starts with the 10-second thing, right? Attention, attention, attention. Like if you're overstimulated or overly I don't want to be here right now. It's like you start to observe those thoughts that you have, which is like, why am I here right now? Oh, because I'm here for this person. Did I say hi to them? Am I going to say bye to them? Am I really here for that person then if I don't care about those things? Who are they to me? And you can spiral, right? But don't make anybody else's problem. Like I said earlier, like don't externalize this spiraling. And if the answer's, it's usually pretty simple whenever you're taking the 10 seconds and you're like, what's happening right now? It's like, oh, this is just people talking, right? At a party, a birthday party, whatever it is. And what I try to do is like come to appreciate those moments more and more. That makes the little broken mirror thing bigger and bigger, right? The more focus I put on that moment of that day, the better. Maybe it's better. If there's an alternative method, we could argue from the other point of view. Like, don't stay focused on anything. Lie to yourself all the time. Don't be honest. Don't actually think about the thoughts that you're having. Bury those deep. Just a reminder, this is talking from the other point of view. Bury all your thoughts. Don't actually try anything or attempt. Don't take action. Just sort of be a passive person throughout life. Let everything be decided for you. Never be responsible for your own actions, right? And that's another thing. Okay, so I'm flipping back to what I think is good advice. That was all bad advice. But being responsible is a very difficult thing because I can be a little arrogant with myself sometimes. Well, with myself, with other people. Because I guess I am with myself. Like, I convince myself that I'm, like, correct in this thing, right? But it's sometimes hard to see it from another person's point of view. And that's what I've really tried to do this past year. Really, I feel like I've come a long way since last year. I've always been kind of working on it, but, like, might have made the most strides in this in the last year. With taking responsibility. And that's especially difficult in a marriage with one person, right? This is the one person that you need to really, they'll notice all the bad things about you, right? And it's all about the balancing act of like, what stuff are you willing to put up with? Like who they are, and I can't change that, right? Because you don't want to control anyone. Because if you were in complete control of somebody you were in a relationship with, that's not good. You might be a narcissist if that's what you want out of a relationship. Because that's the fun of it, right? The unpredictability, I give a question and I'm hoping for a Heather response whenever I talk to her. Like that's what, we've been married 5 years as of 2 days ago. And we've been together about 9 total, like dating and stuff. And we are completely different people than when we first met, right? That's how it should be, I think. And there's a saying that says, you have no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago. But what do you feel obligated to, right? Like if you're, I'm this person, I hate smoke, I don't like smoking, I don't like this lifestyle that I'm living, drinking too much, on social media too much. If you don't like these things, like you don't have to be that person anymore. You don't have to, like, nobody is forcing you to do that, to think those things or do those things. It's like this artificial obligation that we put on ourselves, right? It's the trees, the feeling of the anxiety in the trees, right? What I was talking about earlier, separating those feelings, like you close your fist and you can open it yourself, right? What's actually holding you back is your thoughts, or what you think is actually doing the actions for you are your thoughts. when going back to the open closing fist thing, if you remember. Yeah, don't think about your thoughts. It gets way too complicated. Just have this one loaded thought that comes in. Focus on it. Know why you're going to do it or why you're not going to do that thing. And the decision can be made instantly. The better you get at it. I mean, that's literally what I'm doing right now, is not exactly thinking about what I said. I have my journals in front of me, and I'm not reading from them because I guess I could. I tried to find a reason not to, but, Oh, man. Yeah, so I started this reflecting on this last week, and I have a couple of notes written down. Man. So when I was on the plane to Albuquerque in last week, March 24th, when I wrote this down, I wrote down that I was trying to decide for myself how this weekend would go, because it hasn't happened yet, and it wasn't happening when I was writing it down. But how could I decide how this weekend would go? An important part about deciding for yourself, I think, is boundaries. Like setting that with anyone, right? And these boundaries don't limit you, right? They sort of expand, the mirror, the broken glass in the mirror, right? It kind of gets rid of a couple of those little shards that you don't really need to focus on, because there are certain things in your life that you've they call it the sunk cost fallacy. Like, you've invested all this time into this one thing, so why would I, give up on it now? Because sunk cost, right? Like, I put so much time into it. Don't want to leave it, right? Oh, I've been friends with this person this long. Why would I not be friends with him anymore? Jeffrey is my best friend. I'm not talking about not being his friend anymore. But it was about deciding how this weekend would go, right? I didn't want to drink too much. And it became very easy for me once I said, nobody else is deciding how much to drink for me, except for me. So I set that boundary for myself. I didn't need to externalize any of this, going back to not making it anyone else's problem, like the thoughts that go inside of your head. I don't have to tell anybody this. I just have to decide that for myself, that I'm really would like to not be hungover, because recently, I'm now 28. There was a time a few months ago, I just had a couple of sips of whiskey, and I was already very feeling it a lot. And then my head hurt the next day, and I was like, Heather, what's going on? And she was like, you're just getting old. But this is that's a weird feeling. If you don't change, your body will for you. Anyways. I've never struggled with alcohol. It's just not worth it to me to get super blasted, wasted, drunk, and my exercises of trying to appreciate and remember each and every moment. It wouldn't make sense to do something where it's harder to remember moments, right? That's sort of what alcohol does. You become forgetful. So, yeah. But it is fun. Everything's just about everything recreationally is fun, as long as it's in moderation. You can persist in your own folly, though, become wise. You'd also be a fool. But I think we're all fools in one way or another. Just don't tell anybody. You don't have to tell anybody. And so I made it through this weekend and did a good job. This past weekend, did a good job. And it was a fun time. Everybody had fun. And then I had to go into family emergency time. That was started on Tuesday. I drove to San Angelo and I was there with my family, and then they had to go to Houston for more tests. It was cancer stuff. MD Anderson is the hospital. So, yeah, it's scary stuff. So as I'm like experiencing those things, like I have to be present with my friends who are there to have a good time, right? I could have been dropping, oh, it was my birthday earlier this week, or oh, my mom has cancer, by the way. Like, how was that an introduction? I was the only person flying in to this bachelor party, so it was my friend Jeffrey and his friends, right? And I was sort of an outsider, right? So what am I bringing in? Is it positive vibes or is it negative vibes? Like, they say people don't remember what you say, they just remember how you made them feel. So there's a time and a place for bringing all this up. Even though it was like, could come up at the top of my mind. Like, I'm very concerned for this, for my mother. But I'm not going to really out to everyone I meet. I mean, this is a podcast, so I can do that, I think. But maintaining that awareness, right? Like, hey, I'm going to bring the vibe down if I do this. Not going to do it. While I was in San Angelo, where I'm from, my hometown, that was an interesting visit because I think I realized how much, because I lived a very different past than, if you've ever been to San Angelo, Texas, it's the largest small town. So I think they're putting an interstate in now, but it was like the largest town without an interstate going through it for a while. Like the closest bigger city is Abilene, which is like an hour away. So it's sort of isolated. And that's where I grew up. I went to a high school, not in San Angelo, but it's called Very Best. And it had 15 or 16 people in my graduating class, senior graduating class. And that was like what was normal for me. And then I go to college, Angelo State University, and there's just so many more people there. You meet a new person every day. Like, that's crazy to me. And it just sort of expands from there, like with experiences. What if I like never left San Angelo? Like, that's, how different would I be just staying in the same town that I'm in? I know I would be a different person, right? Because it would be different experiences accumulated. But, I mean, it's sad to say, but I don't know if I would be as happy if I would have stayed there and not chased after opportunities that were presented to me, right? This goes back into the thought of, I want to do this thing. I think I said it in the very beginning. If you want to do something, you say it out loud. And then if you don't do it, it can kind of rot inside of you as regret, right? Like, I want to do this thing. Don't do it. What happens next? Do you feel good about not doing that thing? That might be me in San Angelo. Who's to say? But yes, this was me going back to a place where I was like, saying all that, like, does it feel like an escape leaving? And then you come back and it's like, oh, the fear of, I'm coming to a realization, I think, right now. The fear of becoming stuck again might be there. Like, what were you leaving? It's the thing you're coming back to. What is that thing? Probably nothing. Can't name it. But anyways, yeah, weird feelings, right? And there's certain Texas is a big place. So culturally, different areas have different, like, points of view and mindsets, right? Like, Austin's weird. West Texas is tumbleweeds. and mesquite trees. Like growing up there versus here versus somewhere else. Like that goes with any part of the world, any community, any region. Like geography has a lot to do with it, and climate, temperature shapes the society, of course. I think my point is that San Angelo people in West Texas and people in Austin have very different points of view on a lot of things. So when you come back, it's sort of a culture shock in a way, but also it's like, I know this already because I'm from here. So what's the surprise? There is no surprise. People think differently all the time. There's nothing wrong with that. Like when we're in Europe, there's some crazy differences in how they do things over there. I'm going to get into detail right now, but just seeing different points of view is interesting. But I think I was more equipped, like I said, in this last year. I've been like really working on myself, and then coming back, it's like much more equipped for experiences, if that makes sense, right? More capable of reflection after things happen. And that's what I'm doing literally right now too, but I've already thought of these things myself. Never said them out loud though. So yeah, that was sad though, in conclusion, like going there for somebody with cancer. Never fun, right? And then Heather and I have our anniversary on Friday, so I have to make sure I'm back for that. But like, it was wonderful. We did just go outside and eat Chick-fil-A, and that's pretty much all we need is Chick-fil-A and together time. And then we had a rehearsal dinner, and that was a fun little adventure to experience for a wedding that we had the next day. So congrats to Alex. It was very pleasant. It was one of the nicer weddings, because I normally do photography at weddings, and it's been years since I have been a free elf like Dobby at a wedding. But then I get a request. Hey, Ethan, for the send-off, can you take the photo? We're going to send the photographer home early. And I said, yeah, sure. That's my gift. So I did end up taking a photo, but not all the photos, which was nice. But I almost got away with it. Maybe someday. And then that brings us to today, where I really wanted to do a podcast and finish one, because trying to do it weekly, we've been releasing them Saturday or Sunday. And so today is Sunday, and you may have just listened to our Intermission podcast, Between Alaska, part 1 and part 2. But that's just thoughts by Ethan. This will also be its own multi-part series, where if Heather's just not available and I am, then I'm just going to say a couple things about what I'm thinking. It'll be sort of a stream of consciousness, if you haven't noticed. And that's pretty much it. So if you've enjoyed this, tell people about how interesting it was, or for whatever reason you enjoyed it. Because I'm trying to grow this thing. If this is not the best way to grow a podcast, let me know. If this was a unique experience that you don't ever want to experience again, this is a one and done thing, just don't let me know. Just kidding. Let me know, and then tell me what I could do better. If you like this video, subscribe and do all the things that you need to do to see more things like this, or hear more. And take action. Start your own podcast. It's not easy, but if that's what you want to do, I'm saying, then do it. Because I do believe everyone has that potential within them to do within the realm of laws of physics, right? You can do whatever you want. So, those words, keep your fists closed or open. Just make sure the choice is yours. Thanks for watching or listening. Goodbye.